Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. Made it to the end of another week, and it's time for more draft evaluation. And today we're going to be doing defensive end. And remember, we're doing defensive end from the perspective of a 3-4 defense because allegedly that is what we are switching to. Allegedly we're switching to a hybrid defense, but I think that if you're going to run a hybrid, I've talked about this before, but I'll say it again. If you're going to run a hybrid, I think you need 3-4 personnel that can play 4-3 on occasion, much more than you need 4-3 players that can play 3-4 on occasion. Much easier to have 3-4 personnel occasionally doing 4-3 things. So when we're talking defensive ends in this draft, we are talking about the guys who are going to be playing defensive end in a 3-4 perspective. So you've got those three down linemen, the middle one is the nose tackle, and the two guys next to him are the defensive ends. So with the supposed switch of our defense to a hybrid that seems to be leaning towards the 3-4 based off what we've been doing so far this offseason and the way the coaches have talked about it, it seems to me that the starters at end right now are going to be Shelby Harris and Quentin Jefferson, possibly Poona Ford instead of Quentin Jefferson. Poona, to me, is the X factor here. If Poona Ford can play defensive end in a 3-4, then we don't have a huge problem here. But if he can't, then number one, we probably need to trade him ASAP because he's not going to have a lot of room to do anything on this defense. And two, we need more help because after Poona, you get down to guys like LJ Collier and maybe bringing back Robert Kemdichi. I'm actually kind of disappointed we let Kerry Hyder go because I felt like he could have played this role very well, but we decided to move on, which tells me that we may have big plans for this position in the draft. So the goal is to maybe not force Quentin Jefferson to be a starter and potentially replace what we're in theory going to try to get out of Poona Ford. Because at the end of the day, I look at Poona Ford and I know he's good and I know he can do stuff. And I'm not saying he'd be completely useless. But I think it has to be said that if he can't do it, then don't wait around for him to have a year where he can't do it and you're not getting good stuff out of him and then you really don't get any value for him because he's going to walk in free agency next year. Move him now. But in any case, let's take a look at some of the guys we could draft to play 3-4 defensive end for this new defense. So the first guy we're going to look at here is the only day one prospect here because, frankly, you usually don't see 3-4 ends go very high in the draft. They tend to be more the second to third round is when they start going. There's a reason for that. Defensive ends in the 3-4 are kind of a thankless task. You don't put up big stats, you don't get a lot of credit, you don't get a lot of accolades from pundits, and you don't get a lot of notice from fans. Most guys who can play defensive end, they want to play in a 4-3 where they can put up the big stats. But we do actually have one guy who's going to be a first-round pick this year who I think could do it. It's George Karlaftis of Purdue. This guy, he checks the boxes for being a 3-4 end more than any other guy I could find in this draft in the top end. Maybe Trevon Walker, but I would say Karlaftis above Walker in this role. He's a 6'4", 266. If he needs to put on a little bit of weight to be on the edge in a 3 or the end in a 3-4, that's fine. Ran a real nice 40 time at his pro day, 4.71, 4.36 20-yard shuttle, 21 bench presses. So he's a physical specimen. He only really played 2 seasons in college football. 2019, he had 54 tackles, 17 for loss. Pretty splashy in the backfield, 7.5 sacks. 2021, because 2020 he didn't do much of anything. 39 tackles, 10 for loss, 4.5 sacks, 4 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles. Really good at getting his hands up to deflect passes if he can't get home on the rush. So obviously that second season is not as impressive as the first one, but there were extenuating circumstances, and I think we all understand that this is a very special player potentially that we're talking about here. So the big boards all have him in the first round. A couple of them have him in the top half of the first round. I think you are ultimately looking at like a mid first round pick, somebody who's going to go in about the same breath as Jordan Davis. So Karlaftis, the pros with him, pretty obvious. He's an elite power rusher. He's great one-on-one against blockers. If you get him one-on-one against a tackle or a guard, he's got a lot of moves. He's got a lot of tricks up his sleeve. He's got a lot of things that he can do to beat that guy. He's high effort. He understands nuance. And he's versatile as a rusher. And what I mean by that, this is actually something that kind of works against us here, but I think that he's somebody whose best position in the NFL might be 5-tech in a 4-3. So if we are truly running a hybrid, maybe Karlaftis adds extra value there. So Karlaftis would definitely offer a lot to a true hybrid. Some of the issues that could be brought against Karlaftis, he struggles a little bit against the run. There's not a lot of on-the-field speed. I know he ran a pretty good 40 time for a defensive end, but as far as an edge, if you're comparing him to guys like Thibodeau, he is a little bit slower. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to me. I have to ask, how much are we going to be switching on this defense? Are we going to do a ton of hybrid, or are we going to do a little bit? If we're going to be running 3-4 most of the time, I feel like Karlaftis is going to be like a caged bird. Like, he's going to want to fly, and you're going to keep him in this cage by playing 3-4. So if that's the plan, then to me, Karlaftis is not going to get, even if you trade down into the first round, maybe to get like pick 18, pick 19, and then you get him, I don't feel like you're going to get the most out of him there. But if you're going to do this hybrid stuff where you're switching to 4-3 a significant percentage of the time, and he gets to play 5-tech, which I think is really the position he could fly at, then you're looking at Karlaftis and going, he's giving you tremendous value on both ends. If we're doing that, I'm a little more open to it. But to me, if we truly are going to be running 3-4 most of the time, which is the impression that I get, Karlaftis would be very good in the role of an end, but I just don't think I could justify spending a high pick on him. All right, let's move on to some of the guys who are going to go later in the draft. Phidarian Mathis from Alabama is next up, 6'4", 310 pounds, so he actually has a lot of weight to him, a little more than you would expect from a defensive end, but I think he can do it. Did not really impress with his measurables. He ran a 5.28 40, 20-yard shuttle was 4.91, so he's a little slower, a little more lumbering than a guy like a Karlaftis. So you're getting a different kind of player here. And when it comes to his performance on the field, we're really just focusing on 2021. 2021, he had 53 tackles, 10.5 for loss, 9 sacks, 2 pass deflections, and a forced fumble. Much better than any season prior. So he had a big breakout in 2021. And on the back of that, we have 2 big boards, ESPN and Walter Football, say he's a second-round pick. Tankathon, Sports Illustrated, the Draft Network, CBS say 3rd. PFF says 4th. I think you are probably looking at a high 3rd round or low 2nd round pick. So the thing with Phidarian Mathis is that he's not the great athlete that you might want here, but I do think he will be good at taking up space. And at the end of the day, when you're a defensive end in a 3-4, that's going to be a decent chunk of your role. I know that we're going to be doing, I think it's called gap and a half 3-4, so I don't know if Mathis is a great fit for that, but nevertheless, he's one of the best 3-4 end prospects here. Okay, so the stuff to like with Mathis would be he had a massive 2021 season, like I said, 9 sacks. He's versatile, so he would fit well into a hybrid defense, I think. He's great at shedding blocks to stop the run. He's somebody who isn't just there to take up space. He can get off his blockers and quickly bring down the running back. He is a good athlete. I'm not here to act. It's not like he's, it's not like he's Ruben Studdard or something. He's a good athlete. I'm not going to act like he offers nothing in that area. He does have a pretty nice assortment of pass rush moves. And because of his experience level in college, I do think he will be productive as a rookie. Now, the issues with Mathis are pretty clear after the combine. He does lose some value when he's on the move. When you ask him to cover a large area of the field, he's just going to be a little bit slower than everyone else. He can get stuck on offensive linemen at times. It does seem like he has a hard time hitting the offensive lineman with counter moves to get off when it comes to pass rushing, especially. He could stand to be a little bit quicker, but there's stuff to like with Mathis, but at the end of the day, he's not really the day two defensive end prospect I'm really into. This next guy is. So let's go to Logan Hall. This is the guy who I'm into in that second, maybe third round slot. So let's examine him a little bit. A Houston player, 6'6", 283 pounds. He's got the size on lockdown. He's a nice blend of Mathis's size and Karlaftis' size. Ran a 4.8840, which, I mean, it's a heck of a lot better than Mathis. He's a better athlete for sure. He had a 7.253 cone and a 4.44 20-yard shuttle. His measurables are much better than Mathis's. And like Mathis, we are talking mostly about his 2021 season where he broke out in a big way. He had 47 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. And for a guy who projects to be a 3-4 end, that's really impressive. So every single big board I looked at has him in the second round. Some have him high, some have him relatively low. He's probably going to be a second round pick. If you want Logan Hall, you need to spend one of your second round picks on him almost certainly. And should we? I would not mind this at all. He improved massively in 2021. He can play inside and outside. So if you do run that hybrid and you run some 4-3, he can slide inside like Michael Bennett used to, or he can play on the outside. He's got a great frame. He's a good athlete. These measurables stack up very well, especially given the fact of where he's likely to play. He's a high-effort player. I don't doubt his effort. He's got good hands when it comes to trying to get defenders off of him, and he can play all three downs. He's effective against the run. The issues with Logan Hall are that he might be a little too small to play inside at the NFL level. At college, at Houston, he was able to play inside, but can he do it in the NFL? It's starting to get a little bit thin to say that, oh, he's going to be able to take on guards and centers in the NFL at 280, 283. He ultimately might be better as a 5 tech in a 4-3, but again, if we're going to run a true hybrid where we're constantly going back and forth, we can probably make that work. And I feel like that he can make a very good 3-4 end as well. So Logan Hall is high on the list for me in round 2. Okay, next guy we're going to take a look at here is Josh Pascal from Kentucky. And this is a guy who definitely projects, in my opinion, to being effective as a 3-4 end. 6'3", 268 pounds, ran a 4.7740, and he had 3 decent seasons in college, but 2021 was his breakout party. 52 tackles, 15 for loss, really high percentage of making plays in the backfield, 5 sacks, and a forced fumble. So the big boards, Draft Network loves him. They think he could be a late second rounder. Walter Football, Sports Illustrated, and PFF all say third rounder. ESPN says fourth, maybe fifth rounder. CBS says sixth rounder. So it's kind of all over the place. I do suspect he's going to be a day 2 draft selection, though. So the stuff to like about Pascal would be he's highly versatile. Can do a lot of different things on that defensive line. I think Kentucky had him lining up all across that line. He was effective in multiple roles. He was able to rush the passer. He was good against the run. He's quick to the ball. Once the ball is snapped, he's quick to close in on the ball carrier. He's high character. You don't have to worry about any off-field garbage with him. Always nice to keep in mind. He keeps maximum effort at all times, and he's very good at winning on leverage. He keeps low, gets underneath the blocker, and uses the leverage to win those battles in the trenches. So Josh Pascal, definitely somebody I would take a look at our third round pick if he is still available there. And if he slips into day 3, then all the better. The issues with Pascal might be, you have some questions about his consistency. If you look at his 2020, it was a step down from his 2019. You have to wonder where that came from. In 2019, his first year of putting up real numbers, it seemed like he was going to explode in 2020, but it didn't happen. He kind of exploded a year late. You do have to wonder what's up with that a little bit. He also has a disease, or had a disease, called melanoma. He has a little bit of a history of that. You don't know when that's going to come back. That's part of the reason why he's missed some time in college. Supposedly he's past it, but you do have to be a little bit concerned. about his long-term future in the NFL if that comes back. Little bit of a weird thing to worry about, but it's there. All right, we're going to take a look at one more guy here. It's Matthew Butler from Tennessee. Another guy who I think would slot in real nice in a 3-4 defensive end role. 6'4", almost 300 pounds, 5-second flat 40, 7.89 3-cone, 4.8 120-yard shuttle, 17 bench presses. Not a tremendous athlete in terms of his measurables, but at the point that we are at in the draft now with a guy like a Matthew Butler, who projects to be a bottom-end third-round pick or a fourth-round pick by most big boards, maybe even a little lower than that, I think it's fine to understand that not everybody you get is going to be a great athlete. Some of these guys are going to be mostly just run stuffers. So Butler had 3 pretty productive years at Tennessee. 43 to 47 tackles all 3 years. He had 3 TFLs apiece the first 2 years, and then he kind of broke out in 2021. 8.5 TFLs, 5 sacks. So that vaulted him up into the conversation of going on day 2 of the draft. Probably an early day 3 selection, but he might sneak in. Might sneak into the back door of round 3. So he's quick. I know he's not fast. I mean, this 40 time, this 3-cone time, it's not great, but he's quick coming up off the snap. He's technically refined. He knows how to win on technique. He's controlled. He never overruns plays. He's not overly aggressive. He doesn't go too hard on a pass rush move and get completely put on the ground by a smarter offensive lineman. He is good shooting gaps. I know that this athletic profile is not ideal if we're truly doing a gap shooting defense, but he can shoot gaps. He's versatile. He is somebody who you could expect to play a role in a hybrid defense on both ends. He's got a strong motor, always giving maximum effort, and he moves well laterally. He can move side to side well, and in this division where we have to deal with Kyle Shanahan's wide zone running, a lot of runs to the outside, that's certainly very valuable. Issues with him are that he is a little bit smaller, and I know that sounds weird given the fact that he's almost 300 pounds, or that's what he measured in at the combine, but he can get pushed around a little bit because he's not that strong compared to other players that you would see at this size. He does have a lack of length. His arms are not that long, which allows him to sometimes get manhandled by offensive linemen that are just able to use their reach. And even though I do think this guy will be fine as a 3-4 end, he might be better in a 4-3. And I'll say what I said before. It really depends on what kind of hybrid defense we're going to be running. And that's it for the potential day 1 or day 2 defensive ends. Those are the guys that I'm looking at. Big fan of Logan Hall. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. I think he would be great. He's probably my favorite in terms of value. But tomorrow we will be looking at the sleepers. See you guys later. Go Hawks.